ORCS and ORCS, Episode 2, and the title track, Let's Go Hunt Some Orc.
You are listening to ORCS and ORCS, The Seeking and the Telling, created and narrated for you by Sasha Rosalind Wallace, the English Rose, narcissist survivor and warrior queen of the upper realms and guide to the underworld, shining her divine light on the dark underbelly of society and life as we know it. Author and narrator of the inspirational audiobook The Investor's Guide to Scorpio Ranch and Phoenix Bloom, now streaming on your favourite audio player. The physical book can be purchased as a PDF download at patreon.com/The Hero's Journey MC via the shop tab. If you're looking for the gateway to the Hero's Journey Bloom Masterclass, the ride of your life is now boarding. Please sit down and strap yourself in. Show notes will be available for certain podcasts pinned in the comments section or description box, or in the download area, depending on the platform. Thank you for listening to my story. If you are sitting comfortably, then I shall begin. ORCS and ORCS. Show notes for podcast episode 2 will be available, pinned in the comments section or description box or download area, depending on the platform you are listening to this broadcast on. If you cannot find them, you can request a copy by sending an email to theheroesjourneymc@gmail.com. Episode 2 is the title track for this podcast series, to give you a glimpse into why this podcast is called ORCS and ORCS. Let's start here in the deep and go hunt some orc. In fantasy literature, orcs are an imaginary race of human-like creatures, characterized as ugly, warlike, and malevolent. The word orc and ogre is recorded from the late 16th century from the Latin orcus, meaning hell, or the Italian word orco for demon or monster or man-eating giant, which is later revived by J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, partly after the Old English version of orc, O-R-C, which Tolkien took to mean demon, evil spirit, or bogeyman. The first conception of the idea appears in Tolkien's The Book of Lost Tales, written in between 1917 and 1920, where he describes explicitly how Melko created orcs or goblins directly from the earth. Quote, "For all that race were bred by Melko of the subterranean heats and slime. Their hearts were of granite and their bodies deformed." In the famous movie trilogy Lord of the Rings, directed by Peter Jackson, we see an orc born as an urukai, as a full-grown giant being. The character Melko becomes Melkor when Tolkien's son Christopher Tolkien adapted his father's early works from 1917 and developed them to become the Silmarillion, published in 1983. There are some references throughout J.R.R. Tolkien's works that the first race or bloodline of orcs were created from the race of men and elves who had been corrupted by evil, and following that, the orcs reproduced within their own kind, indicating that even they had been pure in the beginning, with a pure heart, but had been manipulated to the dark side. Fun fact here. In 1919, J.R.R. Tolkien began to tutor undergraduates at St. Hugh's, Oxford University, at the same time my late grandfather was a student there, and according to my grandfather, his classes were legendary. J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, author of Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass, were both members of the Inklings while they were tutors at Oxford University. The Inklings are the infamous and clandestine literary discussion group at the University of Oxford for over 2 decades. Christopher Tolkien was invited to join the Inklings by his father, making him the youngest member to be accepted in the group's history. He was just 21 years old. J.R.R. Tolkien died in 1973, but not before he left his indelible mark on literature, fantasy, and the very structure of the English language itself. There are actual dictionaries available that describe the original and complete language that Tolkien created for Middle-earth. Back to orcs then. A different word, orc, alluding to a demon or an ogre, appears in Old English glosses of about 800 AD, and in the compound word orcaneus, or monsters, in the poem Beowulf. As with the Italian orco for ogre, and the English word ogre, it ultimately derives from the Latin orcus, meaning the underworld, or Hades, and the god Pluto. Orc, in reference to a vaguely cetacean sea monster, is possibly borrowed from the French orca or the Italian orca, a killer whale. Thus, orcs have become known to resemble monsters, ogres, goblins, demons, and sea beasts, existing in the bowels of the earth and beneath the ocean waves, and the underworld, the symbolism for hell, our hell on earth. I would go further though, and attest that these orcs, demons, ghouls, and hobgoblins are not merely fictions of fantasy literature. Nay, in fact, I believe they walk among us, creatures of this earth, and stomp around with their big green feet in the astral realm, our dream world, the true stuff of nightmares. If you can picture the creature in the film Venom, you'd be getting really close to the horror that I have seen. They exist on this planet by occupying a host body so that they can appear as humans like you and me by attaching themselves like a parasite or a vampiric energy signature to humans vibrating at a low frequency, who are more susceptible to the negative emotions of fear, insecurity, shame, resentment, jealousy, etc., but most especially people with narcissistic tendencies. These demon attachments are cold, emotionless, soulless beings with no compassion or regard for anything. And like narcissists, they hide their true self behind a disguise, a mask of a Cheshire cat smile, and a goody two-shoes nature, as if they wouldn't hurt a fly, when their real persona is generally the complete opposite. These kinds of demons will go to great lengths to appear like good charitable souls so that they can worm their way in and manipulate their target. In fact, they thrive on or feed off the negative emotion that their host is feeling, or that the host has been able to invoke within another person. So the demon is motivated to create opportunities for fear, anxiety, pain, trauma, and feelings of neglect, low self-worth, and low self-esteem, to be felt and experienced, so that they can continue to feed off of this negative energy, which is known as loosh energy, Loosh, loosh energy in arcane circles. And as far as we can tell, demons are always ready to feed. Stay wary, stay vigilant, and please speak up and speak out if you or someone you care about is at risk of narcissistic abuse. It's way more common than people think. And there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel, I promise. And you know what they say, if you're going through hell, keep going. And on that note, let's now jump to the top of the page, to the top of the show notes. It's time to meet the ORCS. So who and what and where are the ORCS? And what are we talking about when we say ARC? Starting at the top, where he belongs is Archangel Michael, the one true warrior. As the only son of the original 3 sons that did not betray the Elohim. And the Elohim, the true translation is gods, Gods, plural, suggesting many gods. However, most versions of the Old Testament of the Hebrew Bible translate the word Elohim as simply God, G-O-D, a singular being. Michael, Lucifer, and Amenadiel are the 3 sons, the 3 first sons, and they were each responsible, like generals, for 1/3 of the legion of angels. First Lucifer, then later on also Amenadiel, defied their gods and absconded with their own army of angels, aka the men of renown, and mated with the daughters of earth, seeding them with their divine DNA and fathering the Nephilim, a race of giants. It was these acts of rebellion against God that led to their expulsion from heaven down into hell, or down to earth, and thence became the fallen angels. Thus 2/3 of the entire legion of angels became the fallen, forever to be at war with their divine brothers and sisters in the heavens. Archangel Michael, however, has long been considered, as channeled by mediums and psychics, as the warrior guardian angel, due to his unrelenting defense of spiritual law, and along with his legion of just 1/3 strong army of archangels that were left, to protect the human race from his own fallen siblings. We can take from this idea then that since the dawn of time, the demonic forces, or dark angels, you could say, have outnumbered the archangels by 3 to 1. Or 2 to 1. I'm finding that ratio kind of strange, because if I say 2 to 1, it sounds like there's just I don't know, I guess it is 2 to 1, but I'm going to leave it as 3 to 1 for some reason. And this could illustrate why the dark side has held so much power over the earth, because of this huge imbalance of the dark to the light forces. Is this why, in our modern times, why so many fall into the darkness of temptation rather than seek the light of illumination? The other reference for an ark that resonates here is the Ark of the Covenant, presumed to hold the broken tablets of the 10 Commandments as received by God, as received directly from God via the burning bush by Moses at the summit of Mount Sinai in Egypt. the very same hard mountain hike on icy, rough-hewn paths that I made in 2007 in the dead of night with a few special friends. Witnessing the sun coming up over the peaks of the Sinai Mountains and the breathtakingly beautiful walk back down the mountain to St. Catherine's Monastery remains one of the most wild, untamed and spiritual experiences I've ever had. I even touched the alleged bush with my fingertips, held in conservation at Santa Caterina's Monastery. The bush was not burning, but green and blooming. From where I stood, I could see the church and the mosque buildings side by side, their church spire and minaret tower back to back, reaching skyward in unity, since the construction of the monastery sometime between 548 and 565 AD. During the 7th century, the monastery had provided a centre of refuge for scattered communities of Christians threatened by the rise of Islam. Spared by the Muslims, the monks, according to tradition, conciliated and concealed the invaders or defended from invaders by erecting the small mosque within the walls, where the local Bedouin Arabs still worship to this day. Important at this point to mention a fantastic movie that really goes into some wonderful historical detail and adventure about the search for the Ark of the Covenant, and that is Raiders of the Lost Ark, with Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. And I actually watched it the other day, and I was just absolutely bowled over by the nearness and accurateness to sort of the history and the scripture and the idea of what the ark was supposed to look like. The description of the ark is given in beautiful detail in the Bible, and they've really worked hard to convey the mythology and the mystery and the power of what this was supposed to be. And I think it's very interesting, the last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is supposedly supposed to hold all of God's power, and it has the power, once opened, to, because they look directly at the light, which is something you're not supposed to do in scripture. You cannot actually lay your eyes upon God's face or see him in the flesh. You would just be destroyed. But because all these people are full of evil and demonic entities, that's why, they are sort of tempted and destroyed by looking at what's inside the ark. And it's just a really close resembling of Pandora's box, and that's the bit that we're going to talk about in the next section. But before we go there, I wanted to pick up on a quick point about Mount Sinai, which, as I've just mentioned, I visited and climbed that mountain in 2007 when I lived out in Egypt. And I've recently come across some very interesting information. A new theory has been put forward that the true location of Mount Sinai is not in Egypt, as in the true location of where Moses allegedly received the 10 Commandments from God via the burning bush, is another Mount Sinai, not in Egypt, but actually in Saudi Arabia, a place called Jabal Makla, which lies in the Jabal al-Lawz mountain range in northwestern Saudi Arabia. Whether we can ever know which is the true original location, I believe there are 3 possible alternative locations in Saudi Arabia. But either way, it's very interesting, and it certainly does not diminish the significance of the message taught by Moses, whichever mountain range he was standing on. maybe all mountain ranges. Maybe it's symbolism far deeper than the idea of one location. Maybe it's about ascending the mountain of wisdom, of enlightenment, illumination. That's what I feel. So, Pandora's box. The Ark of the Covenant, I believe, especially as sort of viewed in Raiders of the Lost Ark, is another allegorical tale for Pandora's box. When all of the demonic vibrations are released or unleashed like hellhounds upon mankind as a test of their virtue, which side would they choose? Goodness or evil? The light or the dark side? The true hidden message of this story pertains to the last gift left at the bottom of Pandora's box, which was the virtue of hope. Pandora held a box. Actually, the word is pithos, a jar, from the Greek, and this is a Greek mythology. The word pithos means a jar. So Pandora had a jar which contained all of the world's evils. And we can also take from jar the similarity to a cup or the Grail, and the search for the Holy Grail, the search for the Ark of the Covenant. Many of these stories are interwoven in their symbolism. Don't ever open it. As Zeus anticipated and warned her, Pandora's curiosity got the best of her, and she opened the box, allegedly unleashing all the evil into the world and ending earthly paradise. From the small chest flew troubles and woes, sorrow, disease, vice, violence, greed, madness, old age, and death, to plague humankind forever. Pandora managed to keep one spirit in the jar as she slammed the lid shut. A timid sprite named Elpis, usually translated as hope. Zeus did not realize that Prometheus had secretly added hope to the box before he had given it to Pandora. In Greek mythology, Prometheus is one of the Titans, the supreme trickster and a god of fire. In common belief, he developed into a master craftsman associated with fire and the creation of mortals. His intellectual side was emphasized by the apparent meaning of his name, Forethinker, which became synonymous with Lightbringer, a name for Lucifer. Prometheus is a symbol of wisdom and benevolence. He gifted fire to humans in rebellion against the gods, and he suffered for this rebellion. His name became synonymous with standing against injustice. He was the rebel who stole fire from the gods. When Prometheus stole fire from the gods, there were unintended consequences. He thought by bringing humans a tool, he would make their lives better in every sense. But powerful technology must be used responsibly. Giving humans fire also meant giving humans a moral choice to use the tool for good or for evil. This fire can be interpreted as knowledge, or divine intuition, or divine DNA, and opens the gate to the story of the snake in the Garden of Eden. But that is a can of worms we can open at a future episode. Back to arcs, and on to the word arcana. The arcana definition, in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the definition is the word arcanum, which is pluralized as arcana. So arcanum would be one, arcana would be two or more, came from the Latin arcanus, meaning secret, and it entered the English language as the Dark Ages gave way to the Renaissance. It was often used in reference to the mysteries of the physical and the spiritual worlds, subjects of heavy scrutiny and rethinking at that time. Something arcanious is something done secretly or in confidence. The next bullet point you'll find in your show notes is the art of tarot, which is an ancient mystical tool of divination, normally a deck of 78 illustrated cards that helps the reader to understand the occult or hidden symbolism and significance of the signs and synchronicities of our relationships, our personal journey, and our purpose in life. The tarot is comprised of 3 distinct sections that work together to draw a picture and tell a new story every time we ask a question of the universe and pull cards to navigate the answer. The 3 sections are as follows: the major arcana, which is the essence of the spirit, the minor arcana, which is the essence of the body, and the royal arcana and the essence of the soul. If you are interested in learning more about yourself through tarot, or you have a burning question for the universe right now, this minute, you can find a wealth of videos on my own channel on YouTube under the name Bloom Healing Tarot. That's Bloom Healing Tarot. Or let your intuitive higher self pick up the reins for a while and simply search for your zodiac sun sign, like Aquarius or Taurus or Leo or Scorpio, in the YouTube search bar. Spirit, God, the universe, whoever you deem your creator is listening out for your arrival, and they will guide you to the answers you need to hear most at this time. So the last arc, or maybe the first arc, but certainly the arc you've all been waiting for, if you've been paying attention, is, yes, you've guessed it, it's Noah's Ark. In Hebrew, this comes to us through the words Tevat Noah, or Noah's ship. It is the ship in the Genesis flood narrative, Genesis being the first book of the Old Testament of the Bible, through which God spares Noah and his family, and examples of all the world's animals from a global deluge. The animals went in 2 by 2. The story in Genesis is actually based on earlier flood myths originating in Mesopotamia, and is reported with variations in the Quran, where the ark appears as Safinat Noah, Noah's ship, and also Al-Fulk, which we don't have the Arabic translation for, but the Arabic and the Hebrew is written in this section if you want to check it out. The myth of the global flood that destroys all life begins to appear in the Old Babylonian Empire period, which is the 20th and as far back as the 16th centuries AD. The version closest to the biblical story of Noah, as well as its most likely source, is that of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh. You can find out more about these different beliefs about Noah's Ark with these clickable links in the show notes for episode 2, or please tune in soon to see our full-length episode about Noah's Ark and other flood stories of mythology and prophecy, coming soon on our podcast, Arcs and Orcs. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've really enjoyed preparing it for you. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you feel, and what you know about this content personally. I'd love to hear your feedback. And please feel free to drop suggestions for future ideas we can discuss. Or you can do it by sending an email to me at theheroesjourneymc@gmail.com. Let's talk about it. Ciao for now.